What happens when a movie shows something it is not supposed to show? When the camera lingers just a second too long and the meaning slips through anyway. American queer cinema in the 60s and 70s was never loud. It was cautious, sometimes angry, sometimes fragile, but it was there, half hidden, half defiant. And once you notice it, you cannot unsee it. Stay with me, because some of these stories changed movies forever. Number 15, Advise and Consent, 1962. This film did not shout, it whispered, and that whisper carried consequences. On the surface, Advise and Consent looks like a serious political drama. Dark suits, closed doors, long conversations about power and reputation. But beneath that polished surface, the film quietly tells one of the most uncomfortable stories of its era. At the center is a respected public figure whose private life becomes a pressure point. Not because of corruption, not because of crime, but because of who he once cared about. In early 60s America, that alone was enough to destroy everything. The film never turns him into a joke. That mattered. He is portrayed as capable, intelligent, and human. But the system around him shows no mercy. Rumors become tools, silence becomes a trap, and dignity is treated like a weakness. What makes this film important is not how much it shows. It is how clearly it shows fear. Fear of being known. Fear of losing everything without ever doing anything wrong. That anxiety hangs over every scene like a shadow that never moves. Advise and Consent did something rare for its time. It admitted that society, not the individual, was the real problem. It asked viewers to feel discomfort rather than laugh it away. That made it risky and unforgettable. Number 14. The Children's Hour, 1961. This film did not invent the rumor. It showed what rumors can destroy. The Children's Hour tells a quiet story that grows heavier with every minute. Two women run a school. Their lives are orderly, respectable, calm, until a single accusation spreads beyond control. The film never rushes. It lets the damage unfold slowly. Whispers turn into judgment. Judgment turns into isolation, and isolation becomes unbearable. What makes this story hit hard is how realistic it feels. No dramatic villains, no grand speeches, just ordinary people choosing distance instead of understanding. For its time, the film was daring. It treated its characters with seriousness and care. They are not exaggerated. They are not mocked. They are simply human. That alone made the film controversial. But the era would not allow peace. The ending reflects the limits of its moment. The system closes in. Compassion arrives too late, and the audience is left sitting with the cost of silence. The Children's Hour mattered because it forced viewers to confront consequences, not of behavior, but of fear. It showed how quickly society punishes what it does not want to understand. This was not comfort viewing. It was a mirror, and many people did not like what they saw. Number 13. The Killing of Sister George, 1968. This film arrived when rules were breaking, but mercy was still rare. The Killing of Sister George did something unusual. It refused to soften its characters. Its central figure is loud, bitter, funny, and deeply flawed. The film does not ask you to like her. It asks you to watch. Released just as old restrictions were collapsing, the movie openly acknowledged same-gender relationships without code or disguise. That alone shocked audiences. But openness came with a price. The characters are harsh. The world around them is colder still. This was not a story about acceptance. It was a story about survival in an industry that had no patience for anyone who did not fit neatly into its image. Power dynamics are everywhere, in relationships, in careers, in who gets to stay and who gets pushed aside. What makes the film important is its refusal to simplify. These people are not symbols. They are complicated, messy, sometimes unpleasant, and very real. The Killing of Sister George showed visibility without comfort. It proved that being seen did not automatically mean being treated kindly. That honesty unsettled viewers, and that discomfort is exactly why the film still matters. Number 12. The Boys in the Band, 1970. This was not one character. It was a room full of voices. The Boys in the Band changed everything by doing something simple. It let queer men talk to each other, not as side figures, not as hints, but as the center of the story. Set during a birthday gathering, the film feels almost too real. Conversations sting, jokes cut deep, laughter hides regret. Every character carries a different version of the same pressure to perform, to explain, to survive. Some critics called it harsh, others called it honest. Both were right. The film did not pretend that community erased pain. It showed how self-defense can turn inward when the outside world offers no safety. What made this film revolutionary was its refusal to translate itself for comfort. It trusted the audience to listen, even when the words were uncomfortable. For many viewers, this was the first time they saw themselves reflected at all, flaws included. The boys in the band did not offer easy hope, but it offered recognition, and that was a beginning. Number 11. Cabaret, 1972. This film smiled while the floor cracked beneath it. Cabaret uses music and glamour to tell a story about denial. Set in a world drifting toward collapse, it follows characters who choose distraction over awareness. Love, identity, and freedom exist on borrowed time. Queerness in Cabaret is not treated as scandal. It is treated as normal, casual, almost effortless. That was radical, especially when contrasted with the growing darkness outside the club doors. The film's power comes from contrast. On stage, everything feels playful and alive. Off stage, tension builds quietly. The audience knows what the characters try not to see. Cabaret does not punish its characters directly. History does that for them, and that makes the film linger. It reminds viewers that freedom without vigilance is fragile. This was queer cinema woven into a warning, wrapped in lights, sung with a smile, and remembered long after the music fades. Number 10. Midnight Cowboy, 1969. This film was marketed as gritty realism. What it really showed was loneliness. Midnight Cowboy arrived at the very end of the 60s, when American cinema was shedding its polished surface. On paper, it is a story about survival in New York. In practice, it is about connection in a city that refuses to offer it. The relationship at the center is not labeled. It is not explained. Two men drift together out of need, frustration, and quiet understanding. The film never tells you what to think. It simply lets closeness exist without instructions. That ambiguity was powerful. Audiences felt it even if they could not name it. Care replaced distance. Loyalty replaced ambition. In a decade obsessed with freedom, this film suggested that companionship might matter more. What made Midnight Cowboy stand out was how naturally it treated emotional intimacy between men. No jokes, no panic, just presence. That alone unsettled expectations. The film won major recognition, but its deeper influence was quieter. It gave space to vulnerability, and it proved that stories about male connection did not need armor to be compelling. Sometimes the boldest move is not saying anything at all. Number 9. Sunday, Bloody Sunday, 1971. This film treated love like a fact, not a problem. Sunday, Bloody Sunday moved differently than most films of its time. Calm, thoughtful, adult, it presented a shared relationship without urgency or explanation. No shock value, no punishment, just people navigating emotion. What made this film remarkable was its tone. No raised voices, no dramatic framing. The story unfolds quietly, trusting the audience to keep up. That trust was rare. The character at the center is professional, composed, and self-aware. His life is not defined by struggle. It is defined by balance. Work, care, disappointment, and acceptance all coexist without collapse. In the early 70s, this approach felt almost radical. Queer identity was often framed as conflict. This film framed it as reality. Sunday Bloody Sunday did not chase approval. It did not try to teach a lesson. It simply existed, and that simplicity carried weight. The film suggested a future where identity did not require explanation. A future cinema would take decades to reach. Number 8. Fortune in Men's Eyes, 1971. This film refused comfort and did not apologize for it. Fortune in Men's Eyes was never meant to be easy viewing. Adapted from a stage play, it trapped the audience in an environment defined by control, fear, and hierarchy. Every interaction carried tension. The story focuses on identity under pressure. Labels become tools. Power reshapes behavior. Survival forces people into roles they never chose. The film never sensationalizes. It observes. For early 70s audiences, this was shocking, not because of what was shown, but because of what was implied. The film suggested that environments shape people more than nature ever could. What made it significant was its refusal to simplify masculinity. Strength is questioned, authority is unstable, vulnerability becomes dangerous. Fortune and Men's Eyes did not offer hope. It offered honesty. And in its era, honesty was disruptive. This was queer cinema as confrontation, not asking for understanding, demanding attention. Number 7. A Very Natural Thing, 1974. This film tried something radical. It aimed for normal. A Very Natural Thing followed two men building a life together after college. No tragedy, no disguise, just daily routines, disagreements, and affection treated as ordinary. That simplicity was revolutionary. The film arrived when audiences were conditioned to expect pain or spectacle. Instead, it delivered quiet realism. The story does not rush. It watches relationships evolve. Friends react. Families hesitate. Life continues. The drama comes from choices, not fear. Critics at the time did not know what to do with it. Some dismissed it as uneventful. Others recognized its bravery. It was not trying to shock. It was trying to exist. This film mattered because it imagined a future instead of replaying despair. It showed what living could look like, not just surviving. Sometimes progress does not arrive loudly. Sometimes it just walks in and sits down. Number 6. Dog Day Afternoon, 1975. This was not a message movie, it was a human one. Dog Day Afternoon wrapped a deeply personal story inside a tense public event. What began as chaos slowly revealed something quieter. Motivation driven by care. Decisions shaped by devotion. The film never treats identity as a twist. It treats it as truth. Characters respond with confusion, empathy, and bias all at once. The reactions feel real, unscripted, uncomfortable. What made this film groundbreaking was how naturally it centered love without apology. No lessons, no speeches, just persistence. Audiences saw a reflection of society in real time. Support clashing with fear, curiosity colliding with judgment, humanity breaking through noise. Dog Day Afternoon did not ask viewers to agree. It asked them to watch closely. And by the end, many realized they had. Number 5. The Panic in Needle Park, 1971. This film was not labeled as queer, but it understood the margins better than most. The Panic in Needle Park is remembered for its raw look at young people lost inside a system that offered no safety nets. But beneath that surface is a deeper story about isolation, chosen families, and people pushed outside acceptable life paths. Queer presence in the film is subtle. It exists in glances, spaces, and the way characters gather for support rather than approval. There is no explanation, no spotlight, just coexistence. What made this film important was its refusal to separate struggle into neat categories. Pain did not care about labels. Neither did survival. The film treated outsiders as human first, statistics never. In the early 70s, that approach mattered. Cinema was beginning to recognize that identity often intersected with class, power, and visibility. The Panic in Needle Park did not offer answers. It showed environments where options were limited and judgment was constant. Sometimes queer cinema is not about who is named. It is about who is seen. Number 4. Scarecrow, 1973. This film hid tenderness behind silence. Scarecrow follows two drifting men crossing America with dreams that never quite take shape. Their bond grows slowly, not romanticized, not defined, just steady. The film resists labels. It lets affection exist without explanation. Care shows up in gestures, shared meals, waiting, staying. In a culture obsessed with toughness, this kind of closeness felt radical. Male connection was often framed as rivalry. Scarecrow framed it as shelter. Audiences at the time did not always know how to read it. That ambiguity gave the film longevity. It allowed viewers to project, reflect, and recognize pieces of themselves. Scarecrow mattered because it expanded emotional space. It suggested that strength could include softness. That companionship did not weaken masculinity. This was not a loud rebellion. It was a quiet refusal. And quiet refusals can last a very long time. Number 3. The Rocky Horror Picture Show, 1975. This film did not ask for permission. It kicked the door open smiling. The Rocky Horror Picture Show arrived and confused almost everyone. It mixed music, exaggeration, humor, and identity into something audiences had never seen before. At first it failed. Then it grew, slowly. Late nights, repeat screenings, costumes, participation. It became more than a movie. It became a gathering. What made Rocky Horror powerful was freedom. Identity was playful. Roles were flexible. Rules were optional. For many viewers, it was the first place they felt allowed to experiment without explanation. The film did not argue for acceptance. It performed it. Its influence cannot be measured by box office alone. It created space, community, tradition. Rocky Horror proved that joy itself could be resistance, and that laughter could be loud enough to last decades. Number 2. A Very Natural Thing, 1974. Normal was the boldest idea of all. When A Very Natural Thing premiered, it confused critics. Where was the drama? Where was the shock? Where was the downfall? The film answered quietly. Life does not always explode. Sometimes it continues. By showing two men building routines, friendships, and futures, the film challenged expectations without raising its voice. No tragedy, no spectacle, just everyday choices. That ordinariness was revolutionary. It imagined a future few films dared to show, one where identity was not a warning label. The film struggled for attention at the time, but its legacy grew. It proved that representation did not need extremes to matter. Sometimes, seeing yourself simply living is the most powerful image of all. Number 1. The Boys in the Band, 1970. This is where American queer cinema stopped whispering. The Boys in the Band placed queer men at the center of the frame and refused to move them aside. They were funny, cruel, loving, insecure, honest. For the first time, a mainstream American film allowed a group conversation without translation. No filters, no disguises, just voices. The film divided audiences. Some saw pain, others saw truth. What mattered was visibility. This was not coded. This was direct. Its influence stretched far beyond its runtime. It proved stories could exist without apology. That community could be complex. That representation did not need to be perfect to be real. The Boys in the Band opened a door that never fully closed again. That is why it stands at number 1. So here we are. Films that did not wait for permission. Stories that slipped past rules, expectations, and fear, then stayed anyway. American queer cinema in the 60s and 70s was not perfect, but it was brave. It pushed, paused, whispered, and sometimes shouted. If one of these films surprised you, say which one. Share your thoughts, subscribe for more deep dives, and ask yourself this: what stories are still waiting to be seen today?